I never thought the truth would explode like this, until Han Soare raised her hand and slapped my pregnant wife right in front of me. And I didn't stop it fast enough. That single moment didn't just expose the affair. It shattered the illusion that I still had control over anything in that room. My wife didn't fall. She didn't scream. She just stood there, touching her cheek, looking at me like she had already decided something I wasn't ready to accept. And in that silence, I realized the real consequence wasn't the slap. It was what she stopped feeling for me after it. If you're following this story, don't just leave it here, because what happens after that slap changes everything. Not just between me and Han Soare, but between me and the woman carrying my child. Subscribe now, because in the next part, the truth doesn't just get exposed anymore. It starts destroying everything that's left to protect. And once that begins, there's no turning back. Subscribe now, because this is where love, money, and betrayal finally collide. The room was already heavy before anyone spoke. My pregnant wife stood in front of me, still, controlled, but watching everything like she was waiting for a truth she already suspected. Han Soare stood across from her, shaking, not confident anymore, not the same woman who walked in earlier. My stepmother stayed silent in the background, like she was waiting for me to break first. My wife finally spoke. "Tell me the truth." Her voice wasn't emotional. It was firm. Han Soare looked at me first. That moment alone told everything. Because this wasn't just her confession. It was ours. I exhaled slowly. And for the first time, I didn't avoid it. "It didn't start as love," I said quietly. My wife didn't move. "Then what did it start as?" "Business." That word landed heavily. I continued. "She was introduced to me after the marriage, through financial arrangements and connections I was handling." My wife blinked once, slowly. "And then?" she asked. My voice dropped. "And then it became more complicated." Han Soare stepped forward slightly, her voice shaking. "I didn't plan to fall for him." My wife looked at her directly. "But you did." Silence. Han Soare nodded. "Yes." My wife turned to me now, not crying, not begging, just confirming. "So while I was pregnant, you were building something with her?" Couldn't lie. "Yes." That single word changed her expression slightly. Not anger yet, something colder. Understanding. Han Soare suddenly raised her voice. "You think you were the only one hurt?" She stepped forward. "You think he didn't love me too?" The tension snapped instantly. My wife took one step forward. "Love?" she repeated softly. And in that moment, Han Soare lost control. Her hand moved. The slap landed across my wife's face. Sharp, final. The sound cracked through the penthouse. My wife's head turned slightly from the impact, but she did not fall. She slowly touched her cheek, then lowered her hand. No tears, no breakdown, just silence. And then she spoke. "So this is what it was." She looked at me now, not broken, not emotional, just seeing everything clearly. A marriage built on me, and an affair built behind me. No one spoke, because she wasn't guessing anymore. She knew. Han Soare stepped back slowly, because the reaction she expected never came. My wife wasn't destroyed. She was finished with illusions. Outside the glass, Soul kept moving like nothing happened. Inside this penthouse, everything had already been exposed. The silence didn't last long, because silence like that never does. It always breaks under truth. My wife was still standing where the slap landed. Not moving, not reacting, just watching Han Soare like she was no longer surprised by anything. That was the part that scared me more than anger. Because anger burns, but silence like hers decides. Han Soare was the first to break it. "I didn't mean, I just..." Her voice collapsed mid-sentence. But my wife raised her hand slightly. Not weak, not emotional, just enough to stop her. "Don't," she said calmly. One word. And Han Soare stopped immediately. I finally moved. Slowly. Not rushing toward comfort. Not rushing toward chaos. Just stepping into control. My eyes stayed on Han Soare. "You hit her," I said quietly. Han Soare's lips trembled. "I lost control." I tilted my head slightly. No. Pause. You chose to. That hit differently. Even my stepmother shifted in the background. Because that wasn't anger. That was decision. My wife finally turned her head toward me, not asking for protection, not asking for comfort, just watching me, studying me, like she was trying to understand what kind of man was still standing in front of her. Han Soare suddenly spoke again. It wasn't supposed to become like this. I took one step forward, then another, slow, controlled. You don't get to decide how it becomes anymore, I said. My voice dropped lower. You already crossed the line. Han Soare stepped back instinctively, fear finally replacing emotion. My wife spoke quietly behind me. Jean. Just my name. But it stopped everything inside me for half a second. Not because she was weak. Because she wasn't. She was still standing after everything. Still composed. Still aware. That's what made it heavier. I didn't turn fully. But I answered her. Yes. Silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. So this is what I was living inside. No anger. No crying. Just realization. Clean, painful understanding. A truth she could finally see clearly. Han Soare tried again. I loved him. I didn't plan. But I cut her off instantly. You don't love someone and destroy their family in the process. That line ended it. Completely. The air in the room changed. Even Han Soare stopped speaking. Because now there was nothing left to defend. Only consequence. I turned slightly. A signal. Not dramatic. Just final. And the men outside moved. The door didn't crash. It opened like it was already decided. Han Soare saw it immediately. No, wait. But I didn't look at her anymore. I was looking at my wife. Still standing. Still silent. And I realized something then. The slap didn't break her. The truth didn't break her either. What broke was everything she believed was real. And now she was deciding what to do with what was left. Outside the glass, Seoul kept moving like nothing happened. Inside the penthouse, everything had already ended. The room still felt broken after the confession. But what my wife didn't understand yet was that the truth wasn't as simple as betrayal. She stood still, one hand resting near her stomach, watching me like she was trying to decide if anything I said could still matter. Han Soare didn't speak anymore. She already said too much. My stepmother stayed silent in the background, waiting, not surprised, just observing. My wife finally spoke. Then explain it properly. Her voice was calm, too calm. That was worse than anger. I exhaled slowly, because this was the part one didn't want her to misunderstand. It didn't start with emotion, I said. She didn't respond. It started with pressure, business, control. I paused, then added honestly. I didn't love her. That sentence changed the room slightly. Han Soare's head lowered immediately. But I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on my wife. My wife blinked once. Slowly. You didn't love her? No. Silence. I continued. Whatever happened between us, it grew out of situations I never intended emotionally. My wife's expression tightened slightly. But it still happened. Yes, I admitted. That honesty mattered. She stepped back slightly, like she was trying to understand the shape of betrayal, not just the word. So what did I mean to you then? She asked quietly. That question hit deeper than anything before it. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was heavier there. Finally, I spoke. You were the only thing that was real. Silence again. My wife's eyes searched mine. You say that after everything? I nodded. Yes, and I meant it. Han Soare was never what I built my life around. I paused. You were. That sentence made her stop moving completely. Even her breathing changed slightly. Not soft. Not emotional. Just processing. I continued. I made mistakes. But I never stopped loving you. My wife looked away for a moment, like she didn't want the words to reach her too easily. But they did. And she hated that they did. Han Soare finally spoke quietly. So I was nothing? I turned my head slightly. You were part of a mistake I should have ended sooner. That honesty broke her further. But I didn't soften it. because softness would be another lie. My wife slowly looked at me again, her voice quieter now. So you're saying I wasn't replaced? I shook my head. No. I was lost in something I should have stopped. Silence. The room wasn't chaotic anymore. It was heavy in a different way. My wife took a long breath, then said something I didn't expect. Then why didn't you stop it? I had no easy answer. Because the truth was messy. But I gave her the real one. Because I thought I had time. That sentence stayed in the air. And for the first time, her expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness yet, but understanding beginning. The silence after that wasn't empty. It was thinking. My wife was no longer looking at me like an enemy, but she wasn't close to me either. She was somewhere in between. Hansoare stayed quiet now. She had already lost her place in the conversation. My wife finally spoke again. So it wasn't love between you and her? I shook my head. No. And it wasn't hate either. No. She nodded slowly. Then it was weakness. That word hit harder than anything else. I didn't deny it. Yes. She looked down for a moment, then back at me. Do you regret it? That question mattered more than anything before it. I didn't hesitate. Yes. My wife studied me carefully, trying to see if it was real. Then she asked the next question. Do you regret me? That one stopped everything. Even Hansoare looked up slightly. I stepped forward one small step. No. My voice was firm. I never regretted you. Silence. She searched my face again. But you hurt me. I know. And you let it happen. Yes. That honesty made her breath shift again. But she didn't break. She was still standing. Still strong. Just different now. Less anger. More understanding. Then she said quietly, so what now? That was the real question. Not about the past. About what survives it. I looked at her directly. I fix what I can. And I accept what I can't. That was the truth. She nodded slightly, slowly, like she was deciding whether that was enough. The room felt different now. Not lighter, but calmer, like a storm had passed without fully destroying everything. My wife finally stepped closer again. Not fast, not emotional, controlled. She stopped in front of me, looked up, and said quietly, I don't forgive easily. I nodded. I know. She exhaled slowly. But I also don't live in lies anymore. That line stayed between us. She looked toward Hansoare briefly, then back at me. I won't forget what happened. I don't expect you to. Silence. Then she said the final line. But I understand what you meant. That was the closest thing to forgiveness she could give right now. Not forgetting. Not excusing. But understanding. Hansoare lowered her head completely now. She was no longer part of the emotional center. Just a consequence that had already been processed. My wife turned slightly, then paused. And next time, she said softly. There is no next time. I nodded. I know. She placed her hand back near her stomach, protecting what mattered most. Then she turned and walked away slowly. Not breaking, not crying, just finished with the chaos. I stood there, watching her go, understanding something finally clear. The truth didn't destroy everything. It rebuilt what was honest enough to survive it. And behind me, there was nothing left to explain anymore. Outside the glass, Soul kept moving like nothing happened. Inside the penthouse, everything that mattered had already been decided. The silence didn't break immediately after my last words. Settled, heavy, but different from before. Because now, it wasn't confusion anymore. It was understanding starting to form. My wife stood in front of me, still pregnant, still composed. But her eyes had changed slightly. Less shock, more analysis, like she was rebuilding the entire story in her mind from the beginning. Hansoare stayed silent behind her. No more interruption, no more defense, just presence. My stepmother leaned slightly back in the background, watching everything unfold like a final result she already calculated. My wife finally spoke. So you're saying? She paused, carefully choosing her words. You didn't love her. I shook my head immediately. No. The answer came without hesitation. That mattered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then why did it happen? That question was sharper. Not emotional. Logical. I exhaled slowly. Because I allowed distance where I shouldn't have. She didn't interrupt. So I continued. It started as business interaction pressure, situations I handled without thinking about emotional consequences. A pause. And she was there in that space. My wife studied me carefully. But not in your heart. No. That single word made the air shift slightly. She repeated it slowly. So she was never your priority. I nodded. That's correct. Silence. Han Soare looked down slightly at that moment. Not crying. But reduced. Not erased. Just no longer central. My wife took one step back. Not away from me. Just thinking. Processing. Then she said quietly, "And me?" That question landed differently. Because it wasn't about Han Soare anymore. It was about her place in everything. I stepped forward slightly. You were never part of the confusion. She looked up. My voice stayed steady. You were the only part of my life that was real. Silence again. This time it didn't feel like tension. Felt like weight shifting. My wife blinked once. Slow. Careful. Like she was testing whether to believe it. And yet I still got hurt, she said softly. Yes, I admitted. That honesty mattered more than defense. She nodded slowly, not agreeing, but acknowledging. Then she said something quieter. So it wasn't love versus love. No, it was mistake versus truth. I didn't correct her, because she was right. She looked down for a moment, then back at me, her voice calmer now. Do you regret it? Yes. No hesitation. She searched my face again, trying to see if I was hiding anything. Then asked the final question. Would you undo it if you could? That question was heavier, because it wasn't about truth anymore. It was about consequence. I answered honestly. I would stop it before it ever reached this point. Silence. My wife nodded slowly, not forgiving yet, but something inside her softened slightly. Not weakness. Understanding. Then she said quietly, I don't know what I feel yet. I nodded. That's fair. She took a slow breath, then added, but I know what I don't feel anymore. I waited. She looked at Han Soare briefly, then back at me. I don't feel like I'm blind in my own life anymore. That sentence changed everything, because it wasn't forgiveness, but it was clarity, and clarity was the first step away from chaos. I didn't speak. I just watched her, as she slowly started reclaiming her own space in the story. Outside the glass, Soul kept moving like nothing happened. Inside the penthouse, the truth was finally no longer hidden. It was just being understood. The room didn't feel the same anymore. Not because something new was happening, but because everything had already been decided. My wife stood still for a moment, one hand resting near her stomach. No tears, no shaking, just silence, control, understanding. Han Soare remained behind her, frozen in place, waiting for something that would never come. My stepmother had already turned partially away, like she knew her role here was finished. My wife finally spoke. I won't forget what happened. I nodded slowly. I know, she exhaled. But I also won't live inside it anymore. That sentence changed everything. Not anger, not forgiveness, direction. She looked at me one last time. I choose peace. Then she turned slightly toward the door. But before she could take another step, I raised my hand slightly, not toward her. A signal. And the atmosphere shifted instantly. My wife stopped. She looked back at me, confused, not scared, just aware. Then I spoke calmly. This isn't the end yet. Silence. Han Soare's breathing became uneven, because she understood something before anyone else did. I took my phone out. One message. Short. Direct. Sent. Within seconds, the building's external doors locked. Then came footsteps. Not random. Organized. My men. Professional. Controlled. The elevator chimed. Han Soare turned her head slightly. No, she whispered. The doors opened. Two of my men stepped in first. No rush. No chaos. just authority. She backed away immediately. Jean, wait. I can explain. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on my wife. My voice stayed calm. You already did. My wife watched silently, not interfering, not emotional, just observing what consequence looked like. Han Soare tried to move again, but another step blocked her. Firm, final. My man spoke into his earpiece. Target secured. That was it. No shouting. No struggle yet. Just control. Han Soare's voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to become this. I finally turned slightly toward her. Not angry. Not emotional. Just final. You don't get to decide how far consequences go. She froze, because that wasn't a threat. It was already execution of decision. My men moved in. Calm. Professional. One took her arm. Not violently, but firmly. Han Soare resisted for a second, then stopped, because resistance meant nothing here. My wife's eyes followed everything. Still calm, still steady, no satisfaction, no pain, just closure forming. Han Soare was escorted toward the elevator. She looked at me one last time. Jean! But I didn't respond. The doors closed. Silence returned instantly. Not empty, just complete. My stepmother didn't speak anymore. She simply left the room without a word. My wife stood there for a moment longer, then turned slightly toward me. I didn't ask for revenge, she said quietly. I nodded. I know. She paused. But you gave it anyway. I answered honestly. Not for revenge. For ending. Silence. She looked at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. I understand now. Not everything, but enough. She turned and walked toward the door again. This time, nothing stopped her. I stayed behind, watching her leave, not losing her, not winning anything, just realizing that some endings are not loud. They are simply final. Outside the glass, Seoul kept moving like nothing happened. Inside the penthouse, everything had already been cleaned by truth and consequence. You made it this far for a reason. Something in this story kept you here, and that feeling isn't sluchina. Maybe you saw yourself in it, maybe it reminded you of something you've been through, or maybe it just spoke to a part of you you don't always show. Don't just watch and forget it. Hit subscribe now, not just for more videos, but for more stories that actually mean something. The kind that stay with you, the kind that make you think, feel, and see things differently. There's so much more coming. Deeper stories, stronger emotions, moments that will hit you in ways you don't expect. So stay with me, subscribe now, and keep watching because the next story might be the one you'll never forget. You made it this far for a reason. Something in the story kept you here, and that feeling isn't sluchina. Maybe you saw yourself in it, maybe it reminded you of something you've been through, or maybe it just spoke to a part of you you don't always show. Don't just watch and forget it. Hit subscribe now, not just for more videos, but for more stories that actually mean something. The kind that stay with you, the kind that make you think, feel, and see things differently. There's so much more coming. Deeper stories, stronger emotions, moments that will hit you in ways you don't expect. So stay with me, subscribe now, and keep watching because the next story might be the one you'll never forget.